Hi, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 4.3 demo for the piece I call Burt's Surprise. Now, this was something that I did a long time ago. It's just coal erase pencil and ballpoint pen done in a sketchbook as a random thing. And so I decided to pull it out and give it a paint treatment just because I always thought that he was kind of funny and weird, and I thought, let's bring this one out because I always wanted him to have color and he never did. So since I've been kind of on the hunt for digging up old things that I always wish got colored, I thought it'd be perfect. Every now and then when I'm going through my phone just looking at old either photos or something, I'll every now and then come across like an old piece like this and I'll just favorite it. And then when I'm really struggling for something I should either draw or color or whatever, I'll go into that favorites folder and pull something out. So this has been in there for a bit now, and I thought it'd be cool to finally do it. So the funny thing is, sometimes I think in color when I'm drawing. Sometimes I think, oh, this is probably that color, or this is probably this color, but with this one, I never really thought about it. So when I decided to actually do the colors on this, I didn't know where I wanted to go with it. Now, he's obviously got something that looks a bit like a turtle shell, but the intention was never for him to be like a weird turtle. It was just for him to have a shell and be weird. So when I actually was deciding on the colors for this, my gut reaction was that the stuff coming out of his mouth was going to be yellow or green, like some sort of a barf type situation. But then I thought, well, I kind of want him to be green, just because it felt right, and it honestly feels like it's going a little towards turtle, but really I didn't want him to be even more outlandish with his color. If I made him like bright purple or some other color that you wouldn't expect, I think that it would actually be kind of a bit much with how bizarre the rest of his design already is. So I wanted to bring that. I wanted him to be kind of all more natural colors, and that's why you get this red shell that's a little bit more, it's not like a bright red, and his skin isn't, like I said, it's not purple or like bright blue or something like that. And I think that kind of helps make the character feel a little bit more like tangible, I guess, in some ways. But I guess as I'm explaining this, I'm realizing that I'm kind of over-explaining it. I mean, really in the moment, you're just kind of deciding on flats and trying to figure out what colors work together, and the thought process isn't overly deep. There was just a little bit of consideration there. And so once I decided to make him green, obviously the barf couldn't be green anymore, and yellow would probably be a little bit too analogous. So going with pink kind of sets up a fun opportunity, because not only is there always sort of a fun color play between pink and green, but it also makes the picture a little bit more bizarre. Like, why is this happening? And I actually had a really interesting conversation with my wife, because after I finished it, I said to her, I was like, I think I'm going to call it something like Burt's Surprise or Burt's Dilemma. Like, his name is Burt, and this is something that he was not planning on happening to him today, all of this pink stuff flying out of his mouth. And she goes, oh, it's flying out of his mouth? I thought it was flying into his mouth. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I guess it could be going kind of either way. And then she was like, you should ask people which way it's going. So I guess my question to all of you is the pink stuff shooting into his mouth, or is the pink stuff shooting out of his mouth? I think that there's probably a reasonable argument for both. So at this point, I have no idea. I can't actually make the decision. So I guess let me know what you think on that one. So obviously then the rest of this process is just about flatting it. Now, I said a bit ago that I was going to be doing less turpentine brush stuff, and you can see that this is in turpentine brush. The thing I want to stress here, though, is that at this point, the turpentine brush isn't so much about saying like, hey, look, it's the turpentine brush. At this point now, it's just another tool, and right now it's my tool to very quickly get something done and colored. It has a cool look to it, but more importantly, it has a psychological effect on me, the artist in this moment, because it's messier, and so my expectations of how clean everything should be starts going down. I still want it to look finished, and I want it to look like everything was as purposeful as it could be. Not that I left it unfinished or just kind of shitty, I guess you could say, but because I already know what this brush is going to do, and I know that it has a little bit of unpredictable nature, and it's a little rough and stuff like that, it makes it so that my perfectionist brain sort of calms down for a bit, and I can have a little bit more fun, and I can do it a little bit quicker. As you guys saw in the last piece, Pineapple Pete, That was done in like 90 minutes, and that's what this brush sort of allows me to do. This one wasn't done that quickly, but it was still done quickly. And if I were using a clean brush, or I was going for something that had like a really specific rendered feel to the whole thing, I would stress more about making sure that it was clean, and then I would take forever, and it would just become like a little bit more of a torturous experience. So really, this brush just allows me to get through things faster, have a little bit more fun, maybe even experiment more because it's a little bit speedier, and the sort of nature of it is also just a little bit more experimental. So this one is done with the turpentine brush, and the next video is going to be also. But then I think I'm going to go to something that's like really line driven, which is kind of the way the Link piece was. I've been thinking about maybe generating a little bit more material for A Village Corrupted, but I also kind of don't want to, just sort of mindlessly add to that. I have a lot that I'm still figuring out with that, so I might instead do something that's in a similar style, but is just a different thing altogether, just to try and get that same feel, but not have it be tied to that IP. So enough about things that aren't related to the piece directly. Let's talk about this. So it's flatted, and now we're at the point where I'm working on this either pink barf or this pink stuff being shot into his mouth or whatever it is. So what I did here was I flatted it all as if it were a solid object. Then I duplicated it, and then turned off one of the layers, and then I'm going through and I'm erasing away at what I want to be thinner, basically. As the shape turns form, the way our eye sees that sort of like inner thickness as it becomes way more apparent, right? And so that's why you see in glass, or you see in bubbles, or you see in more thick stuff, actually more like slime, like what we see here, you really see that thicker edge around there, and really observe that next time you see it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And so that's what I did, and then I've got that other layer behind it, so I can control its opacity, and that way I can decide exactly how thick this stuff is, because I have that backing layer that sort of represents the inner goo, I guess you could say. So now we're at the stage where I'm doing my sort of form shadow pass. This is done with a light tan, which is what I've been working with a lot lately for my shadows. And then it actually has its opacity dropped a bit because it's a little bit heavy at the beginning, and I want it to be just a touch lighter. And then the cast shadow will actually be heavier when we get to that, the direct light shadow. So how am I moving through all of these layers and controlling the shadow, meaning controlling where it gets painted and everything? Of course, say it with me now, select paint, select clear. I'm actually going to start doing some more technique videos very soon, where I'm actually separating out techniques, because I know that to some degree these videos get really repetitive, and that's really the nature of art process, right? Is like small refinements and discovery along the way and trying to improve it. So that means that on most pieces that you do, your process either doesn't change or it changes in a very small amount. So at this point, I've repeated a lot of the same techniques many times across all of these videos. I'm still going to keep making them because I feel like it's almost like each video is sort of like the standard song on the record, and then every now and then when I do like a techniques thing, it's like the single kind of thing. So this sort of continues to fill the pipe with content, so you guys can still see anytime I make like a small discovery or do something interesting, it'll be in there. And then I'll still group like sort of bigger video events, like for instance the Link redesign, or like when I do like the 5-part technique series, which I'll be doing a new version of that very soon. So and I'll probably even do like an updated version of Select Paint, Select Clear, even though I think the original one still holds up. I'll just do it so that it incorporates a few more techniques as well. So all that's coming. It's just way harder for me to find time to do those types of things because I have to set more stuff up and I have to plan more, whereas these are a little bit more, hey, here's the thing I did and let me talk you through it. So we're getting to the end of the form shadow pass. Right now what you see me doing is going in and adding a bunch of local details to the skin. So I added all of the spots, and I added the lightning sort of under his tentacles, under his neck, a little bit around his face just to bring a little bit more lightness to his face. It sort of vignettes that eye a bit, which is kind of nice. So now we're doing the direct light shadow. So as you know, the select paint, select clear method starts at the furthest back flat, or I guess you could say the lowest flat on your layer stack, and moves up. So this is where you start seeing exactly what my layer stack is. We've got the tentacle, that back tentacle and that back wing are on a back layer. They're on a furthest down layer. And obviously that's because in the actual image, it's the furthest away from us. So that way it allows me to have a little bit more control there when I'm selecting it and moving up through those layers. I should also say that I've been using this method lately with the multiple shadow layers. I've been using it a lot more lately. It's a technique that I've always used, but it's slowly modifying, as I was saying a minute ago, with the process that you slowly refine it over time and you add little things. But the reason you've been seeing it so much lately, and I historically have largely been somebody who actually picks color and paints, it's because this takes away a lot of that worry with the layer limits and trying to struggle with Procreate and its layer limits, and it makes it so that I can just have more fun with the piece overall. I can experiment with lighting, I can do all those things, and it's just simpler, and I'm not having to merge things and do all that management aspect. So that's why you've been seeing a lot of that. I would argue that even if I start doing more like line driven stuff, again, like the link thing, you'll be seeing a lot more of the single, double, or triple shadow layer method, as opposed to doing something where I have the skin group and there's 5 layers in the skin group and the eye group and there's 5 layers in the eye group. It's just far easier. So at this point now, we're doing the direct shadows, going through everything. He's lit from the sort of front left. If you were to put a light sort of on the left side off canvas, but a little bit towards us, that's where his lighting is. And now I'm just sort of moving through everything, doing select paint, select clear, and making sure I'm doing my best to honor that shadow setup. The hard thing about this one, I think, is really just the shadows on the goo. I still basically paint it as though it's normal, but I have to also try to add a little bit of extra effects there to give it some transparency and some shine and all that. So we'll get to that once we're actually at that part. So now we're just wrapping up the tentacles, and then I think we move right into it. Yes, the mustache, which takes just a couple seconds. It's fairly simple, and you can see there how the transparency is starting to work as well. Okay, so now we've cleared where the goo is, and we're starting to shadow the goo. So trying to make sure that this is smooth and goo-like, but also working with the turpentine brush and making sure that it looks the way I want it to. Oh, that actually reminds me, something that I haven't really highlighted before is something that I've been using more and more and more, specifically with the turpentine brush, is the smudge tool in Procreate. I set the smudge to also the turpentine brush, but there's just a different behavior that it has. It's kind of like if you take the turpentine brush and you paint, but you don't lift up the pen, and then it starts smearing a whole lot more. That's essentially what the smudge tool gives you, and you can do it a lot more and have different control over it. And I know that I'm more or less just describing the smudge tool, and the smudge tool has existed in art programs forever, but I just want to highlight that for me it's really valuable with the turpentine brush. I usually never use that tool because it's just not helpful for me, but for this it really helps to smooth out certain areas but also retain the look that you're going for. Now, one thing that I want to highlight before we get to it is since this slime is translucent and it's going to have light pass through it, where I've got the shadows cast by it, I'm also going to have light passing through it. So right there, you see me adding that in, and I tweak it a little bit as time goes on. I also add a lot more pink to the shadow on the teeth, and as the piece goes on, I'll tweak that further just to try and capture that translucent aspect of it. Now we're throwing a little bit of bounce on the eyeball, trying to honor both a little bit of that mustache bounce as well as the pink goo. We decided to go with this bright blue sky sort of background, and now I'm adding in bright blue reflective light from everything around. So certain things are going to capture it. I'm not going to go bonkers with it. We've got it captured in the eye. We've got it captured in the goo to try and make the goo look a little bit more reflective. And then we're adding a little bit of a rim light to finish rounding out the form of the character a bit. I also changed the color of the back wing and lowered its opacity a little bit more so that it feels like it's being pushed more into the atmosphere behind it. And now to really capture some of that, the shiny aspect of the goo, I'm adding some extra rim lighting going on underneath it, just to really try to sell that material as much as possible. So now you see me going in and refining some of those bounce lights that I had in there before, the reflective light, just so that off of the goo, just so that it really sells it. That's me tweaking a bunch of layers and just trying some stuff out that honestly wasn't very successful. And then I ended up going with that, where it's got a little bit of that reddish towards the end of it. And when all the layers get flipped back on, it just works nicely to give it a little bit more, like it has a little bit more subsurface scattering going on in there. And then I'm adding a little bit of that highlighting on the shell to sell that material. I want it to be shiny. You can also see, by the way, I left the plates out because I wanted it to be less turtle-like and just get it away from that turtle vibe. And then I added a little bit of that like hot stroke that goes alongside the shadow. And now we're just adding some messiness and texture to the background. At one point I wanted to add a bunch of like really fat chunky noise to the whole thing to add a little bit more interest there, and that's what you see sort of turned on now, but I end up eventually turning it off. I do a bunch of tweaks to it and then I turn it off, and honestly at this point I can't remember if I forgot to turn it back on or if I made an executive decision to like kill it, but it's not there in the final piece, so I'm not gonna cheat and run over and turn it back on real quick. So I added in these question marks because I thought that'd just kind of add a fun vibe to the whole thing. They're not big enough and there's only two, so eventually I come back in and I add a third and I tweak them quite a bit actually. I got kind of obsessed with tweaking those question marks. Here we're just adding some darkening around the figure to help add a little bit of form and also to bring some of the attention up. I don't know how you wouldn't have attention in the main thing since it's just like this crazy pink goo and this weird guy with a big eyeball, but it just helps control that and it also gives it a certain look. You can also see I have this white offset behind it just to add a little bit more of that I guess sort of irreverent vibe to it that also speaks to those question marks. And so now I'm adding this tattoo of his wife, or for his wife, I guess you could say. Her name is Carol, and she's a lovely lady. So since this has a stylized look, I didn't try to make the tattoo look super realistic on him, but what I do is I basically paint it all in one layer. I just color blocked it, then added the black line around it, and then warp it a little bit and lower its opacity. You can see right there, so that it looks like it's more aged on him. And that's it now. That's the whole piece all finished. You'll see the layer turn off a second and the question marks sort of adjust. I just lightened them so their intensity was a little less on the shadows. And that is the final piece here for Burt and his very strange day that he's having. So I hope you enjoyed this. Again, let me know if you think the pink is going in or out. This isn't some bullshit YouTube, like leave a comment below. I'm really curious to find out what people think, and my wife wants to know too, so we'll see who wins based on how you all perceive it. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. I love comments. I love having conversations on YouTube, so please don't hesitate to chat me up. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.